The cold, endless void of space stretched out in every direction, a dark canvas dotted with the light of distant stars. The warship, Cerberus, moved through the emptiness with a grace that belied its size and firepower. Its black, metallic surface absorbed the faint light from nearby suns, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Silent, deadly, and alone, the ship was a renegade in the heart of the galaxy. Captain Orion Cale stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the shimmering stars ahead. The Cerberus had been drifting for weeks, evading the cosmic enforcers who had once been its allies. Once a proud vessel of the Galactic Order, it had now become a symbol of rebellion. It was more than just a ship, it was a statement, a declaration that the rules of the galaxy could be bent and in some cases, broken. "Captain," a voice broke his thoughts. It was Commander Lyra Voss, standing by the navigation console, her expression unreadable. "We've detected another patrol ship. They're closing in on our location." Orion's jaw clenched. The enforcers never stopped coming. No matter how many times they slipped past their grasp, there was always another patrol, another fleet on their tail. He knew they couldn't keep running forever. "How much time do we have?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with urgency. 5 minutes, Lyra responded. "They'll be in firing range soon." Orion's mind raced. He had always been one step ahead, calculating every move, every angle. But this time, they were running low on options. The Cerberus wasn't built for prolonged conflict anymore. It was a warship of the old guard, a ship built for glory and power, not for the hit-and-run tactics that were now their only means of survival. "I want all hands to battle stations," Orion ordered. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We're not going down without a fight." The crew scrambled into action, moving with the practiced efficiency that came from years of experience. The hum of the engines increased, and the lights on the bridge dimmed as the battle systems powered up. The ship's weapons were old, but powerful, and if they could land a few shots, they might be able to disable the enforcer ship long enough to escape. But it wouldn't be easy. The enforcers had new technology, weapons designed specifically to neutralize ships like the Cerberus. Time was running out. Lyra's eyes darted to the radar screen. The enemy ship was closing in fast, its sleek form a stark contrast to the Cerberus's rugged, battle-worn exterior. "Target locked," she said. "We can fire when ready, but I recommend we get out of their line of sight first. If we're too slow, we'll be sitting ducks." Orion's gaze never left the view screen. The enemy ship was a fast-moving predator, equipped with advanced cloaking technology and laser cannons that could pierce through their shields with ease. They had no time to waste. "Do it," he said, his voice unwavering. The Cerberus jerked violently as its engines surged to life, sending the ship into a sharp turn. The crew braced themselves, their bodies pushed back into their seats as the ship moved at breakneck speed, dodging the incoming fire from the enemy ship. Orion's fingers flew over the controls, guiding the warship through a series of evasive maneuvers, each more complex than the last. The enemy ship fired again, but this time, the Cerberus was ready. The warship's shields flared with bright flashes of light as the laser blasts collided with them, but they held steady, absorbing the energy. Orion wasn't sure how much longer the shields would last. They had taken a beating in their last few skirmishes, but he wasn't about to give up. "Get us into firing range," he commanded, his voice full of intensity. Lyra's hands danced across the console, her eyes scanning the data. "We're almost there. Captain, we can fire now, but we need to make it count." "Fire everything we have," Orion ordered, his voice harsh with determination. "All guns, all missiles. Whatever it takes." The Cerberus unleashed its weapons in a torrent of fire. Missiles streaked through the void, and energy blasts lit up the darkness as they tore toward the enemy ship. For a moment, it seemed like the battle would turn in their favor. But then, a burst of energy from the enemy ship's main cannon struck the Cerberus's starboard side. The warship shuddered violently, and sparks flew from the control panel as the ship's systems overloaded. "Shields are failing," Lyra shouted. Hull integrity at 40% and falling. Orion's heart pounded in his chest. This was it. If they didn't make this next move count, the Cerberus would be lost. They would be lost. "Do you have a plan?" Lyra asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Orion looked around the bridge. His crew was exhausted, their faces worn from weeks of constant evasion. But they weren't giving up. Not yet. There's one last thing we can try, he said, his mind already working out the calculations. Lyra, power up the quantum drive. We're going to jump right into the heart of their fleet. Lyra's eyes widened. That's suicide. The quantum drive is unstable, it's not built for this kind of jump. Orion's gaze hardened. It's our only shot. We can't outrun them forever. This is the only way to buy us enough time to regroup. He turned to the communications officer. Tell the crew to brace for impact. We're making a jump, and we're making it now. The officer nodded, relaying the message. The air on the bridge grew tense, the seconds ticking by in a heavy silence as the crew worked to activate the unstable quantum drive. Orion knew the risks. If they miscalculated the jump by even a fraction, they would be lost in the void of space, scattered across the cosmos, never to be seen again. But if they succeeded, they would be free. Quantum drive is online, Lyra said, her fingers hovering over the final controls. Ready when you are, Captain. Orion glanced at the enemy ship, now preparing to fire again. He felt the weight of his decision press down on him, the fate of his crew hanging in the balance. Engage, he ordered. With a deafening roar, the Cerberus's engines fired at full power. A flash of light engulfed the ship, and in an instant, they were gone, leaving nothing behind but the darkness of space. The universe, vast and unfeeling, had swallowed them whole. When the blinding flash of the quantum jump faded, Orion found himself staring at a horizon of unimaginable chaos. The stars were scattered across the sky like shattered glass, twisted and distorted in ways he couldn't comprehend. It was as if they had entered a realm beyond the normal fabric of space and time, a place that shouldn't exist. The Cerberus groaned under the strain, the ship's hull creaking as if it too were trying to comprehend where it had landed. The bridge fell silent as the crew recovered from the sudden, disorienting jump. Systems were offline, flickering in and out like a dying light. The artificial gravity fluctuated for a moment, sending everyone stumbling. Orion gripped the arm of his chair, his mind racing. He had expected turbulence, even danger, but this was something entirely different. The Cerberus was only a few hundred meters away from the monument when the ground bin status report, Orion barked, his voice sharp. Lyra, who had been working feverishly at the navigation console, looked up with wide eyes. Captain, we've entered a region of space that isn't on any map. The star systems here, they're not supposed to exist. Are we off course? Thomas, the communications officer, asked, his voice tense. He was already working through the data feed, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. No, Lyra replied. We're not off course. We're somewhere else entirely. The quantum jump, it's like we've breached a barrier. The stars are distorted. Some are too young, others too old. It's as if time itself is broken here. Orion leaned forward, staring out at the distorted horizon. What kind of place had they ended up in? And more importantly, what were the consequences of their actions? The quantum jump had been an act of desperation, but this was a whole new level of risk. Can we contact anyone? Thomas asked, his fingers moving swiftly across the comms panel. No signal. Not even a faint trace. It's like we've been cut off from everything. Lyra's voice faltered slightly. She didn't say it, but the fear was there. They had no idea where they were or how to get back. Orion's mind raced through possibilities. They could be stranded, trapped in an uncharted region of space. Or worse, they could be in a place where the laws of reality itself no longer applied. Captain, Lyra said, her voice tight with concern, there's more. The ship's sensors are picking up something, a massive energy signature. It's coming from a nearby planet, but the readings, they're off the charts. A planet? Orion's gaze snapped back to the view screen. They had to be cautious. The last thing they needed was to wander into a trap. But a source of energy could also mean a way out. What do you suggest? He asked, his voice calm but commanding. Lyra's eyes were locked on the data feed. We have no other choice. We need to investigate. This could be our only chance to understand where we are and how to get back. Orion nodded, his decision made. He wasn't going to let fear guide him. His crew had been through hell together, and he wasn't about to let them fall apart now. Prepare for descent. Full shields up. I don't want any surprises, he ordered. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Cerberus began to descend toward the planet below. The surface was obscured by thick clouds, an endless storm swirling over what seemed like an abandoned world. No signs of life, no cities, no infrastructure. Just barren, rocky terrain and endless dark clouds that stretched across the entire planet. This place feels wrong, Thomas muttered, his voice barely audible. Like we shouldn't be here. Orion didn't respond. He trusted his instincts. The universe was a vast and unforgiving place, and it was filled with dangers. But they couldn't afford to be afraid. Not now. They needed answers. The Cerberus pierced through the atmosphere, its descent slow but steady. As they neared the surface, Orion's heart pounded in his chest. There was something about this planet that unsettled him, the way the air seemed to thrum with unseen energy, the oppressive silence that surrounded them. Land the ship, Orion said. Let's see what we're dealing with. The Cerberus landed with a soft thud, the landing gear making contact with the rocky surface. The ship's systems hummed as they powered down, the crew still tense, waiting for the next move. Keep your weapons ready, Orion warned. We don't know what's out there. The airlock hissed as the doors slid open, and Orion led the way down the ramp, his boots crunching on the rocky terrain. The planet's surface was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant howl of wind swirling through the desolate landscape. The ground beneath them was jagged, the rocks sharp and unforgiving. There were no signs of life, no animals, no plants. Just an endless stretch of barren land. This place feels like it's been dead for centuries, Lyra commented, her voice low. I don't think it's dead, Orion replied, his eyes scanning the horizon. I think it's something worse. As they ventured farther from the ship, the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. A low hum, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The air felt thick, heavy, as if something ancient was stirring beneath the surface. Suddenly, a crack echoed through the silence, followed by a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the planet's very core. Get back to the ship, Orion shouted. The crew scrambled, racing back toward the Cerberus. The ground trembled violently, and the sky above seemed to darken, the clouds swirling as though caught in a cyclone. The hum grew louder, and then, without warning, the ground split open. From the depths of the planet, a massive structure rose, its form dark and angular, like a colossal tombstone emerging from the earth. It was ancient, its surface covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly with an eerie, pulsing light. The energy signature that Lyra had detected was emanating from this structure, but there was something else, something darker. It's a monument, Lyra said, her voice filled with awe and terror. But it's not of any civilization we know. Orion's blood ran cold as he gazed up at the monument. He had expected danger, but this was something far beyond his understanding. Whatever lay beneath the surface of this world was far older than anything the galaxy had ever encountered. And now, it was awake. The rumbling intensified, and the sky seemed to crack open as beams of light shot from the monument, carving through the atmosphere. The planet was alive, and it was reacting to their presence. Orion turned to his crew, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. Get back to the ship, now. We need to figure out what we're dealing with, and fast. The crew ran back to the Cerberus, but Orion couldn't shake the feeling that they had just stumbled upon something that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Atham trembled again, sending violent shudders through the ship. The crew scrambled aboard, breathless, their eyes wide with fear as the ship's automated systems locked the doors and sealed them inside. The hum from the planet's surface had grown louder, more distinct. It felt like the entire planet was alive, watching, waiting. Orion stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the console as he stared at the view screen. The monument, or whatever it was massive, towering far higher than the Cerberus itself. The energy radiating from it was like nothing they had ever encountered. It was an ancient force, untouched by time, and it seemed to call to them. What the hell is that thing? Thomas whispered, his voice filled with awe and terror. Lyra was already scanning the readings on her console, her face pale. I've never seen anything like this. The energy levels are off the charts. It's almost like it's alive. I don't know how to explain it. Orion's mind raced. The jump had taken them to a place beyond their understanding, a place where the normal rules of physics didn't seem to apply. The monument wasn't just a relic of a dead civilization, it was something more. Something active. Can we analyze it further? Orion asked, his voice cold and determined. They had to understand what they were dealing with before it was too late. I can try, Lyra said, her fingers moving rapidly over the controls. But the readings are so unstable. Every time I try to get closer, the data gets more distorted. Orion's gaze shifted back to the screen. The monument was still pulsating, sending beams of light into the dark sky. It was almost as if it were awakening. A long-forgotten power reasserting itself. But for what purpose? Take us in closer, he ordered, his voice resolute. We can't leave without answers. We'll get as close as we can without getting caught in the energy field. Lyra nodded, inputting the coordinates. The Cerberus began its slow descent toward the surface, the engines straining against the planet's thick atmosphere. The monument's pulsating light grew brighter as they approached, bathing the ship in an eerie glow. The closer they got, the more intense the feeling became. It was as if they were being drawn toward something powerful and ancient. Captain, I'm getting a strange signal, Lyra said suddenly, her voice tense. It's faint, but it's definitely there. It's not like anything we've encountered before. It's almost like a message. Orion's heart skipped a beat. A message? From who? Or what? Can you decode it? He asked, his voice low with anticipation. Lyra's fingers flew over the console, her eyes narrowing in concentration. I'm trying. It's a complex frequency, but I think I've got it. The screen flickered for a moment before an image appeared. It was faint at first, distorted by the interference, but it soon became clearer. The image showed a face, or rather, what appeared to be a face. But it wasn't human. The features were angular, almost insect-like, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of space. The being's expression was unreadable, its eyes empty, yet filled with a sense of infinite knowledge. It spoke, though its voice wasn't transmitted through the usual channels. Instead, it echoed in their minds. You should not have come. The voice was deep, resonating with power and foreboding. It sent a chill down Orion's spine. What the hell is that? Thomas muttered, backing away from the console. I don't know, Lyra whispered, her fingers frozen on the controls. But it's speaking directly to us. It's communicating. The voice continued, its tone shifting, almost as if it were testing them, probing their thoughts. You do not belong here. The order has been disrupted. The balance must be restored. The image flickered again, and then a new one appeared, a massive, cosmic map, filled with unknown symbols and ancient lines that seemed to trace the structure of the galaxy. The map shifted as if it were alive, glowing with energy. Orion could feel the pull of it, the sheer weight of whatever ancient power had created it. This is a warning, Lyra said, her voice trembling. Whoever, or whatever that is, it's telling us we've disrupted something. Something important. Orion took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. They had been running for so long, dodging enemies, constantly on the edge of survival. But this was unlike anything they had ever faced. This was a force older than the galaxy itself. We need to leave, Thomas said urgently, his face pale. Whatever that thing is, it's not something we can fight. We should turn back now, before it's too late. But Orion didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the map, now glowing brightly before them. The ancient being had made its warning clear, but there was something else in its message. Something Orion couldn't ignore. No, he said quietly. We can't leave. We need to understand this. If we leave now, we might never get another chance. Lyra hesitated, her hand hovering over the controls. Captain, the energy signature is rising. We're too close. If we don't pull away now, we'll be caught in it. The hum from the monument grew louder, the vibrations beneath their feet more pronounced. The ship began to tremble once more, and the view screen flickered with static. Orion's mind was set. They couldn't turn back now. The fate of the galaxy, of their people, might depend on what they discovered here. The ancient being, whatever it was, might hold the key to a power they couldn't yet comprehend. But with that power came great danger. Lyra, he said firmly. Get us closer. Full shields. Lyra looked at him, uncertainty written across her face, but she obeyed. The Cerberus pushed forward, its engines straining as they approached the monument's base. The strange being's image appeared again, its eyes glowing even brighter now, as if recognizing their determination. You cannot stop the inevitable. The reckoning is coming. Before Orion could respond, the ground beneath them shook violently. A bright flash of light exploded from the monument, and the Cerberus was thrown backward, its systems flickering and spasming as the energy field overwhelmed them. Captain, we're losing power, Lyra shouted, her hands flying over the controls. The ship bucked and swerved, almost as if it had become a plaything in the hands of some cosmic force. We're caught in it. We need to break free. Orion barked, his mind racing. Full thrust. Now. But it was too late. The Cerberus shuddered violently once again, and then, everything went dark. Darkness. Orion's eyes snapped open, his body jolting upright as a cold sweat soaked through his shirt. The sound of alarms blared in his ears, echoing through the empty, hollow space of the Cerberus. The sudden shock of returning to consciousness left his mind spinning, trying to grasp what had just happened. His hand reached out instinctively to grab the armrest, but it wasn't there. The floor beneath him wasn't stable either. It felt different. Distant. Captain, can you hear me? Lyra's voice cut through the chaos, strained and frantic. Her words broke through the fog clouding his thoughts. Orion shook his head, blinking rapidly to clear his vision. His vision blurred for a moment before snapping into focus. The bridge was dark. Panels flickered weakly, casting an eerie, inconsistent glow. The stars that had once filled the view screen were gone, replaced by nothingness. Just blackness. The universe itself seemed to have been swallowed whole. He grabbed the comms panel, pressing his hand against the console to steady himself as he spoke. Lyra, report. There was a long pause, the sound of static filling the dead air. Finally, Lyra's voice returned, rough and shaken. Captain, we've lost power. The energy field from the monument, it's consumed us. We're in some kind of void. I can't get a lock on anything. The systems are failing one by one. Orion's heart raced. The Cerberus was adrift, floating in some uncharted region of space, caught in the aftermath of whatever energy pulse had originated from the monument. It wasn't just a loss of power, it felt like they had crossed into another dimension, a place where the very laws of physics no longer applied. Can you get the engines back online? He demanded, rising to his feet with difficulty. His balance was off, the gravity in the ship fluctuating unpredictably. I'm trying, Lyra's voice responded. But we're trapped. Whatever force we encountered, it's like a field, or a rift in space. I can't even determine where we are anymore. There's no point of reference. Orion's eyes narrowed as he scanned the view screen, trying to make sense of the nothingness surrounding them. It wasn't just blackness. There were faint ripples in the fabric of space itself, like waves spreading across an endless ocean. This was not normal. They weren't just lost in the void, they were in something else entirely. Captain, we have to consider the possibility that we might never escape this, Thomas's voice chimed in from the comms. This void, it feels like we're being watched. Or worse, manipulated. Like we're part of something much bigger than us. Orion turned his attention to the navigation console, his fingers flying over the controls, hoping to restore some semblance of control over their situation. But no matter what he did, the instruments remained unresponsive, as if they were in sync with the oppressive silence that had taken hold of the ship. Even the faint hum of the engines had disappeared. We can't just sit here, Orion said, his voice cold and determined. We need to find out what's going on. This rift, this void, whatever it is, we need to understand it before it consumes us. Lyra, is there any way to analyze the field? Any signal we can track? I'm working on it, Lyra answered, though her voice was quieter now, almost as if she were speaking from a distance. But Captain, this isn't just some anomaly. This field, it feels intentional. Like it's holding us in place. And there's something behind it. What do you mean? Orion asked, his pulse quickening. Lyra hesitated. There's something here, Captain. Something watching us. Orion turned to face the rest of the crew, who were now gathered in the dimly lit bridge, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. This wasn't just a random twist of fate. This wasn't an accident. They had been led here, to this place, by the monument. By whatever ancient intelligence had created it. We need to figure out how to fight back, Orion said, his voice low but firm. We can't afford to sit idly while something pulls the strings. A sudden, piercing sound cut through the tension, a loud, deep hum. It came from every corner of the ship, vibrating through the walls, the floor, the very air itself. The crew looked at each other, startled, their eyes wide with terror. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, as if something massive was awakening within the ship itself. Then, a voice, not over the comms, but in their minds, spoke, and the air grew cold. The reckoning has begun. It wasn't just a voice. It was a presence, ancient and incomprehensible. Orion felt it crawl under his skin, invading his thoughts. It wasn't speaking to them in the traditional sense. No, it was reaching into their very minds, twisting their perception of reality. You are not meant to be here. You are trespassers. This is a place beyond your understanding. The time of your kind is ending. Orion's pulse pounded in his ears as the voice reverberated in his head, growing louder and more oppressive. His legs wobbled as he gripped the chair for support. Shut it off. Shut it off. Thomas screamed, clutching his head as the voice continued to invade his mind. Lyra was at the control panel, her hands trembling as she desperately tried to find any way to silence the voice. But it wasn't just a voice. It was a force, an ancient will pushing against their thoughts, against their very existence. You cannot escape. Your fate is sealed. The reckoning will come. Captain, Lyra said, her voice barely audible. I don't think we can fight it. This isn't just an attack on the ship. It's in our minds. It's everywhere. Orion's hands clenched into fists as he fought to stay conscious, the weight of the presence pressing down on him like a physical force. His thoughts were spinning, his mind struggling to hold on to clarity. The presence was overwhelming. It was as if they were being consumed by it, drawn into a deeper, darker void. But somewhere, through the panic, through the suffocating pressure, Orion's resolve hardened. This was not the end. It couldn't be. We'll find a way, he said through gritted teeth, his voice shaking but resolute. We can't let this thing break us. He turned toward Lyra, his expression fierce. Get the engines back online. We're getting out of here, even if it means we have to fight through this hell to do it. Lyra nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. She wasn't about to give up, not without a fight. As she worked, the voice continued to echo, growing louder with every passing second. The reckoning is inevitable. You have disturbed the balance. You will not escape your punishment. But Orion wasn't listening anymore. He didn't care about the threats. He didn't care about the fear. All that mattered now was survival. The Cerberus would not fall. Not today. Do it, Lyra, he growled. Get us out of here. The tension in the Cerberus had reached a breaking point. The voice, the presence, it was everywhere now, in every corner of the ship, in every mind, crawling through their thoughts like a poison. It wasn't just a battle of wills anymore. It was a battle for survival. Orion stood at the front of the bridge, his hand gripping the console tightly. The humming had only intensified, growing louder and more oppressive. His team, shaken but determined, was scattered around the bridge, each of them fighting their own battles within their minds as the ancient force tried to tear them apart. Lyra worked feverishly at her station, her fingers flying over the controls in a desperate attempt to bring the ship's systems back online. But the energy field surrounding them, the rift, had all but disabled their systems. The engines were useless. The weapons were offline. They were trapped, stranded in a void, with nothing but the sheer will of the crew standing between them and the unknown force threatening to consume them. "We're running out of time," Lyra said breathlessly, her voice tight with frustration. "The ship's core is almost completely drained. If we don't break free soon, we'll be stranded here forever." Orion's eyes locked onto the view screen. There was nothing to see, just an endless, swirling darkness. But the force, the presence, was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. Watching them. Waiting for them to give in. "You cannot escape," the voice boomed in their minds, sending a shockwave through the crew. "Your fate is sealed. The reckoning cannot be avoided. The balance has been disrupted. It must be restored." Orion clenched his fists, his knuckles white from the pressure. The words, the voice, they were like daggers, tearing into his resolve. But he wasn't going to let it win. He couldn't. "We've faced worse," he said, his voice low but steady. "We've fought for our lives before, and we'll do it again." Thomas, who had been pacing anxiously in the corner, turned to look at him. "We can't fight this, Captain. Whatever that thing is, it's beyond anything we've ever encountered. It's not just a force we can fight with weapons. It's controlling us." "No," Orion said firmly. "It's not controlling us. It's trying to. But we're not going to let it." He turned to Lyra, who was still working tirelessly at the console. "Lyra, what's the status on the engines?" "I've almost got it," she replied, her voice shaky but filled with determination. "If I can just reroute the energy from the auxiliary systems, we might have enough power to break free." Orion nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. They had no other choice. They had to get out now. He turned back to the view screen, his eyes scanning the infinite blackness that surrounded them. He could almost feel the presence bearing down on them, the weight of its intentions pressing against his mind. But there was something else there too. A flicker. A signal. "Wait." Lyra's voice interrupted his thoughts. "I've got something. I think I can trace the energy field back to its source. It's coming from the monument." Orion's eyes widened. The monument. The source of the energy that had trapped them in this place. It was no accident. It was part of the design. "We need to destroy it," Orion said, his voice resolute. "If we destroy the source, we can break free. We have to make our stand now, before it's too late." Lyra's eyes met his, understanding flashing between them. She wasn't asking questions anymore. They all knew what had to be done. The Cerberus rocked violently as a surge of energy pulsed through the ship, shaking them to their core. The voice, the presence, roared inside their minds. "You cannot destroy what is beyond you. You cannot undo what has been set in motion." Orion gritted his teeth. They weren't listening to it. "Not anymore." "Activate all remaining power," Orion commanded, his voice sharp and commanding. "Lyra, we'll make the jump to the monument's location. Prepare to reroute every ounce of energy into the weapon systems. We're going to end this now." Lyra didn't hesitate. Her hands flew over the controls, rerouting energy, reactivating systems, pushing the Cerberus to its absolute limit. The ship shook under the strain, its hull groaning with the effort. The voice boomed again, its words dark and final. "The reckoning is unstoppable. You will fail. The order will be restored, with or without you." "We'll see about that," Orion muttered under his breath, his mind focused on the mission ahead. The crew, though shaken, was rallying behind him. They had no choice. This was their final stand. With a final, powerful surge, the Cerberus shot forward, the engines roaring to life as it broke through the rift, tearing through the dark void toward the monument. The ship was shaking violently, the very core of it straining against the energy field that still surrounded them. But they were close. They were almost there. "Weapon systems are online," Lyra said, her voice tight with focus. "We have one shot at this, Captain." Orion nodded. His gaze never wavered from the view screen, where the glowing monument was now visible once more, pulsating with power. The energy field crackled around it, as if it was preparing for something. "Lock onto the energy core," Orion commanded. "Target everything. We fire everything we have." The Cerberus shuddered again as the weapon systems locked into place. A hum of energy built up around them as the ship prepared its final assault. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The ship's cannons erupted with blinding force, the energy of their combined firepower concentrated into a single beam that shot forward at the monument. The beam tore through the energy field, striking the monument with incredible force. The entire structure trembled, its light flickering as the energy began to destabilize. No! The voice screamed, its presence now writhing in agony as the monument's power began to unravel. The Cerberus rocked violently, the shockwave from the blast shaking the entire ship. The walls buckled, alarms blared once more, but they were free. The void was breaking apart, the rift collapsing as the monument's power was destroyed. Orion didn't allow himself to celebrate yet. They weren't out of danger. Lyra, now. Get us out of here, he yelled, his voice barely audible over the chaos. With one final push, Lyra engaged the engines, and the Cerberus lurched forward, pulling away from the dying rift. The ship's systems flickered to life, the blackness around them starting to fade as the universe reasserted itself. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the oppressive presence vanished. The voice was silent. The weight that had been pressing on them for so long disappeared. They had done it. The Cerberus was free. Exhausted, bruised, and shaken, but alive. Orion collapsed into the captain's chair, his breath ragged as he looked at his crew. The monument was gone. The void was closing. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they were safe. But the war, the fight for the future of humanity, was far from over. They had survived this battle, but the galaxy was vast, and its mysteries were far from being unraveled. And somewhere, out there, other forces ancient and powerful still awaited. Orion's hand clenched around the armrest. They had won today. But there was always more to fight for. And he would be ready.